If you strip away the giant helmets falling from the sky, the ghosts, the prophecies, and the haunted mansions, the Castle of Otranto is actually about a man having the most catastrophic midlife crisis and making it everyone else's problem. Because the moment Manfred realizes that he will lose his power, his title, and his estate, he completely loses his mind and he destroys everything he swore he loved. And the worst thing is that this story is 250 years old and yet it feels strangely familiar. Because throughout history, powerful men have ruined kingdoms, families, businesses, and even entire countries for one simple reason, because they wanted more. And the Castle of Otranto, which is often considered the first Gothic novel ever written, understands this problem way better than modern books do. Hello, my gorgeous viewers and readers. Welcome back and welcome if you're new. I hope your weekend was filled with hidden corridors, suspicious family secrets, and the horrifying feeling that your father might sacrifice your happiness for property disputes. Today's video feels particularly special because recently I had the opportunity to visit Strawberry Hill House, which is the extraordinary Gothic mansion created by Horace Walpole himself, who is the author of the Castle of Otranto. And honestly, the moment you enter in that mansion, you understand perfectly why Gothic literature was born there in the first place. You see the medieval atmosphere, the stained glass, the high arches, the corridors that feel strangely suspicious. It's just, this house comes from a dream, and I completely understand why Gothic literature was born there. And that is where Walpole wrote The Castle of Otranto, which is considered a novel that has influenced many Gothic writers and has solidified Gothic fiction as a genre. And honestly, even though this book or this story is so influential to the Gothic genre, I don't think that many people actually read this story anymore, which is a shame because yes, I understand that this story is in some points absurd and it's also very dramatic, but underneath all the melodrama, there are so many good examples of how power, inheritance, and greed and the desire for wanting more actually ruins people, and what are the lengths that people will go to when their position is at risk. And this is exactly what I want to talk about today. Just as a quick summary, the Castle of Otranto begins with one of the weirdest and most bizarre openings that I have read in a long time. The story starts on the night before a wedding. The groom, Conrad, who is the sickly son of Prince Manfred, is supposed to marry the beautiful Lady Isabella until disaster strikes. Quite literally. Conrad is walking around the castle's garden at night until suddenly a giant black helmet falls onto him and crushes him to death. And the moment the body is discovered, everyone falls onto grief. Literally, chaos strikes. Hippolyta, his mother, is inconsolable, obviously. Matilda, his sister, cannot understand why this has happened to Conrad. And even Isabella is mourning her future husband, or her former future husband, and now understanding that without him, she is nothing. Everyone is mourning him, mourning Conrad, the future prince of the estate, except one person, who is Manfred. Because Manfred is not concerned about mourning Conrad, he is concerned about his succession, because Conrad was the heir of Otranto, and without a male heir, he is worried about not only losing his family estate, but also about experiencing a prophecy that has been haunting his family for generations. So, in order for him not to be affected by this ancient prophecy, he goes into problem-solving mode and he decides that he has to marry again and just produce an heir. The problem here is that he is already married to Hippolyta, who cannot produce more children, and also he cannot marry Matilda, his own daughter. But fortunately for him, and unfortunately for her, there is another person, another woman in this castle that he can marry, which is Isabella. But obviously, Isabella wants nothing to do with him. But the moment she realizes that Manfred won't take no for an answer, she knows that she is in danger and that she has to escape the castle, even if Manfred is dangerously pursuing her. When people talk about the Castle of Otranto, they usually only focus on the Gothic elements, like the ghosts, the curses, the prophecies, or all the supernatural events. But what struck me the most with this book is the fact that every tragedy is set up even before anything supernatural happens. Like, the ghosts here are not the problem. The cause is not the problem either. Manfred is. Because every disaster in this novel originates from one same place, which is one man's obsession with ownership. Ownership of land, ownership of title, ownership of women, or ownership of a future that was never truly his to control. And that's why I want to talk about three things in this video. First off, Manfred's greed, obviously. Second, the way women are treated as political assets. And third, the way the prophecy exposed the natural collapse of power when it is built on stolen foundations. Starting with Manfred's greed, like, the story literally begins with Conrad's death, or most importantly, or better said, it starts with Manfred's reaction to Conrad's death. Like, most fathers would be grieving, many of them would be devastated, but Manfred's immediate reaction is to think about his succession, to think about himself, his state, his title, his power, his influence. He's not thinking about the loss of his son. He is thinking about what he will potentially lose. Because the moment Conrad dies, he immediately starts calculating in his brain, how do I keep my power? How do I ensure that I don't lose anything? Or how do I maintain control? And that is what drives the story. That's what makes this story be what it is. Because if Manfred was mourning his son, this wouldn't be happening. He's just looking for a way to keep all his power and to keep everything that he has worked so hard for. What makes this particularly interesting is the prophecy hanging over Otranto, because it suggests that Manfred's family was never the owner of the castle and that they never truly belonged there. Like, that their ownership was actually resting upon a historical injustice. And that is very telling on Manfred's behavior, because at the end of the day, power that is obtained through corruption creates instability, but will also be all-consuming. And this is exactly why we see so many Gothic villains and so many Gothic men of power acting the same way that Manfred does. Because at the end of the day, what they are struggling with, what the true villain of many Gothic novels is not men, or is not men of power, but it's actually greed and corruption. Now, the second theme that I want to talk about from the Castle of Otranto is the way women are presented as political assets. And the best example of this is Isabella. She is nothing but a victim of a patriarchal system. And that is also very telling and very representative of how women lived during the Victorian era. The tragedy of Isabella is that she enters the story as property. That is her role. She is something that can be owned and that has to be owned. Before Conrad dies, Isabella is a political alliance, because she is the daughter of the neighbor estate, and obviously if she marries Manfred's family, Manfred will own everything, will own both estates, and therefore he will double his income and his title. But then the moment Conrad dies, Isabella becomes a replacement solution. It doesn't matter what she desires. It doesn't matter if she likes Conrad or if she likes Manfred or if she hates them. No one cares about her future. No one cares about her desires. The only question anyone asks about her is who is going to inherit everything that she owns. And that is the most fascinating thing about early Gothic fiction. And it's the fact that the Gothic heroine is usually a tragic victim and she is often trapped. Not because she is weak, but because she lives in a system that refuses to recognize her agency and that refuses to recognize her as an individual. She is nothing but an object that has to be passed down, that has to be owned. Because the moment Conrad dies, Isabella knows exactly what is going on. She understands what Manfred is trying to do. She also is aware that she is being passed down and that her future is being decided against her, or like even without her consent. And she is the only one that refuses to accept this future. She actually is the one that is constantly fleeing and constantly trying to fight for herself and fight for her future, because she knows that no one else will otherwise. Isabella as a character is so important and so relevant, not only because she is the perfect example of what women were going through historically, but also she's one of the first characters that actively fight against the system that tried to consume her. And also at the same time, her story resonates so much even nowadays, because we as women are also trying to fight against this system that is trying to own us. In many Gothic stories, like in Shakespearean novels, we see characters haunted by prophecies. Some of them try to outsmart them, some of them try to secure them, and some of them try to control them. But the pattern here is the same, because prophecies don't create the tragedy, it only reveals it. And this is exactly what is happening here, because Manfred spends the whole entire novel fighting against an outcome that becomes inevitable exactly because he is fighting against it. The more control he tries to have, or the more control he protects, the less control he has and the more control he loses. And the prophecy here only exposes the truth, and it's that Manfred should never have had power in the first place. He should never have had the control that he has. The genius of the Castle of Otranto is the fact that ghosts never destroy Manfred's family. Manfred does. His desire for ownership destroys the family. His need for control, his desire to own everything, to keep his title, to not care about his family, to only care about what he can keep and what can he do in order to maintain control, is what destroys his family. And this is why this story is so relevant even nowadays, even centuries after this book was written, because there will always be men in power who will do anything to keep the power and to remain in control. Kings, emperors, religious leaders, politicians, businessmen, they will do anything to keep what they have and even to gain more. They will destroy everything in front of them in order to get what they want. And that is the real tragedy. That's all for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this review of The Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole. If you did, please make sure that you like and subscribe to my channel. And before you go, there is 2 questions that I want to ask you guys. The first question is, have you read The Castle of Otranto? If you have, please make sure that you put down in the comments your opinion about this book. I would love to discuss it with you guys. And the second question that I want to ask you is, have you ever been to Strawberry Hill House? If you haven't and you have the opportunity, please make sure that you go and that you support them, because they are genuinely amazing. Not only it is a great place to go, and if you are a goth, then you absolutely should go, you will love it, but also at the same time, everyone working there was so incredibly welcoming and loving. Please make sure that you support them and that you go visit them, because honestly, it was fantastic. It's something that you should not miss if you come to London. But yeah, that's all for today. And before you go, make sure that you follow me on my social media. I post there every day, and I have a lot more content about the Castle of Otranto, so you can see it there as well. But yeah, again, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope I will see you next week. Bye.